Hello and welcome to the Chintan Chats. We are so lucky today to meet an old ally of Chintan, Nidhi Jamwal. Nidhi Jamwal has almost 25 years of experience writing, reporting, analyzing environmental issues all over India. She spent several years with the acclaimed Down to Earth magazine, and she's written after that for several publications, almost every important publication you would read in the country. And then Nidhi has then been associated with Gaon Connection for 5 years, which has taken her to a large number of villages in rural India, probably more than any other environmental journalist I can think of today. And it's been really gratifying to read a lot of your work. But today is a very special day for us to talk to Nidhi, because Nidhi went on the Himalayan climate boot camp recently and just returned on May 15th, 2024. And she's here. She lives in Bombay, but she's here with us in Delhi to have this conversation about that experience. Nidhi, thank you so much for making the time and making the effort. You've always been an ally, but thank you especially today.
Oh, thank you so much, Bharti, for having me here and inviting me to speak about my experience, because this whole experience of going to Everest Base Camp has been life changing in many ways, both as an environment journalist and as a person.
So let's just start off with you telling us how was it to climb it? How many days? Why was it life changing?
So I think I must also say that the reason I went to Everest Base Camp was you, because no, I think it's also important, because I think you sent me the application to apply for it, and I happened and because you sent it, I applied for it and my application got selected. So this is a Himalayan climate boot camp which is done by the Nepal Forum of Science Journalists, and they select a group of journalists from SAARC countries, and they take them to the Everest Base Camp. And Everest region is also changing because of climate change. So the whole idea was to take journalists over there so that they understand firsthand what's happening to that region.
And how was the climb itself?
Oh, it was very difficult, to be very honest. So it's an 11-day
Wow.
walking, and we started from Lukla Airport.
To begin with, you're not a climber. And
No,
you're not
no.
even athletic, as far as I remember. You do regular kind of fitness.
Yeah, right. So regular fitness, yoga. I think I do yoga every day, and a little bit of walking also. But I mean, the kind of altitude we are talking of, because Everest Base Camp is some 5,500 meters, 5,500 meters above mean sea level. And for me to go for sea level, which is Mumbai, to 5,500 meters was like a huge challenge. And I think it was, we started our climb on May 2nd from Lukla, which is one of the most dangerous airports in the world.
Why is it dangerous?
Because it's basically just the strip just sits on the edge of a valley, and it's a very short strip. So you have only those small aircrafts which can actually land there and take off, and only one aircraft can land and take off from that. And when you land, it's not a straight strip, it is like this. So when the aircraft lands, it actually goes up like that. And even when it takes off, you just little bit it goes, and then it's up in the air. You can actually see you flying right in the middle of the mountains, and you can see like all above you. So it's one of the most dangerous airports. So you start your climb from there. On 2nd of May we started, and Lukla is I think about 2,900 meters above sea level, and we reached Everest Base Camp on 9th of May. So that's the number of days which it took us to, reach the Everest Base Camp. Then another 3 days to climb down and come back to Lukla. So that's about 11 days and some 170 kilometers.
And how did you push yourself to do? Was it tough?
It was tough. It was very tough. Usually people take like 3 months to train themselves, because in this when you are talking of an altitude which is above like 3,000 meters, your oxygen levels start going down. And definitely by the time you reach the Everest Base Camp, which is above 5,000 meters elevation, the oxygen is less. You have breathing issues. Also, you start having high altitude issues, which means that you cannot sleep, you cannot eat. I mean, every day I had to really push myself to eat because I just wasn't able to eat anything. So those are high altitude issues. You start having headache, you start having nausea. So these are also the things one needs to keep in mind, because if these symptoms get too much, you need to immediately come down because these are life threatening. So it was very difficult because every day we had to walk for about 7 to 8 hours. There were some days it was even 10 hours. So you are walking in a region, one is the steep climb, second is oxygen levels are low, third thing is we were walking when there was snowfall happening, so your shoes get wet, so your socks are wet, but you have to walk, you're walking on the snow. But it's a beautiful experience, trust me. It was very difficult.
How was your encounter with nature there?
Oh, so nature, I think this assignment was very important for me, because whenever as a journalist I travel to an area, you only experience certain kind of ecology. Like, if you go to a desert, like maybe Rajasthan, if I go to Jaisalmer, Bikaner, you you're in a desert ecology, you'll see certain kind of thing. But if you went to Everest region, which is they also called as Khumbu region, because you have a Khumbu glacier there, so that entire area is called as Khumbu region. So in Khumbu region, you will experience different kind of ecologies as you start climbing up. So you start from Lukla, and once you reach Monjo, from Monjo the Sagarmatha National Park starts. It's a huge national park, and the entire Everest region is inside the national park. So it starts with beautiful, you have deodar trees and beautiful green trees, and you have river, Dudh Koshi river, which also comes down to India in Bihar. The Kosi river of Bihar, that's actually coming from Khumbu. So from there, and then slowly as you start climbing up, the ecology starts changing, your flora, fauna, everything starts changing. You enter rhododendron forest. That's like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. The most beautiful forest inside Sagarmatha is the rhododendron forest. Rhododendron, which we call buranch also, is the national flower of Nepal. There are, I think, some 76 species of buranch. And when you enter this forest of rhododendron, it was blooming, and blooming in different shades of pink, magenta, purple, white. It was, you feel you're in heaven, trust me, because I have never seen such a beautiful forest. So the trails are so beautiful, but once you cross the rhododendron forest and you maybe reach an elevation of 4,000 meters above sea level, then the vegetation starts to decrease. After that, all you experience is rocks, snow, and I mean, there's barely any vegetation there, because there's no way plants and trees and all can survive that kind of harsh climate.
And you specially went to understand firsthand what was happening with climate change. So, what did you see for yourself?
I think that region has actually opened my eyes and my mind towards how we look at climate change. And also, it has worried me a lot as a climate environment journalist. We are all the time worried, because we are all the time reporting stories of what's happening, to whether sea levels are rising, or you have thunderstorms happening, cyclones happening. So there's always this worry factor that what's going to happen in the future. But once we went to the Everest region, you realize what climate change is actually doing to even that region at that elevation. So that was an extremely scary feeling for me, because we went to Namche Bazaar, that's Sherpa. So the entire Sagarmatha National Park has Sherpa community there. So we met people over there, and they said they've never seen mosquitoes in that elevation. And now they have started to see mosquitoes also there. And we all know what has happened to Indian hill stations. There was a time Shimla never had mosquitoes. Then it started to have mosquitoes. Now we have vector-borne diseases being reported from all these hill stations. So for to know that something like that is also happening in Khumbu region was very, very scary. Also because this region doesn't have any health facilities. These are like extreme conditions in which people still live over there. There are no big hospitals and no even primary health centers. So if we have changes happening there and they start impacting health, how are we going to take care of these people, indigenous people who live there? Apart from that, the glacier, like Khumbu Glacier, if you see, Everest Base Camp is actually located on Khumbu Glacier. I had thought in my mind that once I reach Everest Base Camp, it's going to be like a wow feeling and I'll be so thrilled and I've done it and all that. And I reached there and I was so upset and I was so heartbroken because one is you see this beautiful Khumbu glacier and you see tents put upon it. So in my head as an environment journalist, I have never seen like glacier which is covered with little yellow tents on top of it. And there were about 1,000 tents which are put up over there, and there are also makeshift toilets which are created there. So for me it disturbed me when I saw this kind of scene. And so the Khumbu glacier also there is receding. It is actually sinking, which is why there is this whole discussion around should we shift Everest Base Camp, because in coming years it may not be able to take the pressure of people that are visiting that region. And in Everest Base Camp, we were there only for about like 2 hours or so, and then we came back down. But the real thing is that can that region actually handle the pressure of so many people? You can shift Everest Base Camp to some other place, but soon the thing will repeat there as well. So I think in an ecologically fragile region like that, from where our rivers are originating, the entire North India is fed by rivers which are coming from the Himalayan range. It's very important for us to regulate that region, to reduce human pressure. Recently there were social media visuals where you have human traffic jam on Everest summit because everybody wants to summit the peak, the tallest peak. And to think that the highest point on earth has a traffic jam. Can you imagine? Forget about Delhi, Bombay traffic jam. Human beings have actually created a traffic jam on the highest point on earth. I think it's a very, very worrisome thing, very, very worrisome thing for us. And I would also like to add that about climate change, because a lot of hill regions are fed through springs. Local people there draw water. Sherpa women draw water from the springs in that region. And we met some women who were filling water from a spring, and they said that their spring water is actually declining. And now they almost take 1 hour to fill one plastic container which used to fill, and then they carry it on their heads. They climb up or down, whichever way is their house. So it's a huge challenge for that region. And I think it's for all of us, because our survival eventually really, really depends on the Himalayas, on the Khumbu region.
Now, that is obviously quite a poignant and almost tragic kind of scenario, and I'm grateful that we're being able to talk to you about it. One would never imagine some parts of this. Coming to the national park itself, it's, living in India, you can't imagine that you can wander off in the most core of the national park. We don't work like this. Our conservation is very different. How is a Nepalese, national park that is globally so famous? What is that all about?
So even I was very fascinated after visiting Sagarmatha National Park, because as an environment journalist, all the stories around conservation or national park that we cover in India, it's always human versus wildlife. You know, it's always been like that. The whole idea is that you have to keep communities out of your forests to preserve forests. So which is why our tribal communities, our forest dwelling communities have all been, evicted from their traditional homes, because the whole idea is that for conservation, let's keep people out. And here we were in one of the most ecologically fragile regions in the world, which is Sagarmatha National Park, which is so beautiful, which is so green, which has so many glaciers, which has so many peaks. But the entire region is managed by the Sherpa community. So we also met the forest department people over there.
Where do these Sherpas, where are they? Are they in the national park?
Yes, yes, yes. So within the Sagarmatha National Park, you have hundreds of small Sherpa villages. People are living inside, they're carrying on with their usual duties. They have lodges also over there. They're going about doing their usual business, but they live inside the national park, because the government and the forest department also understand and acknowledges that this is their region. People who first inhabited Khumbu region were the Sherpas community, which came from Tibet. So they are the original, inhabitants of that region. They are indigenous to that area, and if you see a lot of scientific research, now that I've been there, I'm also trying to read more on this. It's believed that Sherpa community can actually manage its oxygen blood level in a much better way, which is why that acclimatizes them to live at that altitude. Like while we are huffing, puffing, and almost dying, these guys can just climb up and down without anything, because somewhere, over generations, I think their bodies have adapted themselves to use their blood oxygen very efficiently. So I think all these things are recognized by the forest department and the Nepalese government. So they are managing that Sagarmatha National Park. They live inside the national park, to the extent that the entire waste management system of Khumbu region is managed by the Sherpa community. So they have something called Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee, which is formed of the local villagers. So they are the ones who are actually managing that entire thing. Nepali government gives them funds, but they decide how they are going to set up their dustbins, how they will collect, what collection system they have. And I must say that all through the trail of 65 kilometers from Lukla to Everest Base Camp, I really did not see any litter. Maybe one or two chips packets here or there, but they really manage it so well. The credit really goes to them.
That's amazing. I was wondering, you've been mentioning through our conversation that you've met people and so on. I wonder if there was some very profound environmental learning that you got from either these people or a particular person, because there is something larger to this. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. So I think, I believe I'm extremely lucky that during this boot camp, we managed to meet the only living member of the first expedition to Everest, which is the Tenzing and Hillary one, when they summited Everest the first time on May 29th, 1953. They had a large group for the expedition, and in that group they had chosen a few high altitude Sherpas. So we managed to meet the only surviving member of that team, which is Kancha Sherpa. Kancha ji is 92 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. He was 20 years old when he was part of that expedition which helped Hillary and Tenzing summit Everest the first time.
What's his health? What's it like?
Oh, so we were told a day before, he lives in Namche Bazaar with his family. Namche Bazaar is a famous Sherpa village of that region. So anybody who's going to Everest Base Camp or coming down has to cross Namche Bazaar. So so we were told in evening before that we will go and meet Kancha Sherpa ji, who's 92 years old, and we'll have like discussion with him. And in my head, I'm thinking, 92 years old, what discussion are we going to have with him? Because You don't imagine a 92-year person to be able to even speak and then speak coherently and answer your questions around what happened during an expedition some 70 years back. So we reached his house and we were told we were waiting in the veranda and we were told that he's finishing his breakfast and he'll just come. So I was imagining that maybe, somebody holds him, he'll come with a stick and all. And then I see this Sherpa, 92-year-old guy, he just walks out of the canteen, no stick in his hand, nothing. And he walks out smilingly. And there's a chair for him. He comes and he sits down comfortably. And after that, we start talking to him. He remembers everything. He remembered that he was paid 8 coins, 8 rupees, Nepali rupees, coins per day for that expedition, the number of days that he spent over there. He remembers what his father told him. He remembered what his mother told him. He remembered minute details about Hillary. So, a beautiful thing he told us was because it was this expedition which actually opened the Everest to the world, because till 1950 Nepal was not open to foreigners. So all the expeditions which were trying to summit Everest, they were trying to do it from the China side, and that's a very difficult way of summiting Everest. In 1953, when Nepal opened up itself for foreigners, that's when the climbers started trying from the Nepal side. And in 1953, when they finally managed to summit, it has opened Everest to the world. And now everybody, whether it's from South America, North America, Europe, everywhere people come. So I asked him that it was your expedition which has actually opened this whole region to the world. Now you have people all over coming to summit the peak. How does he feel about it? So he said something very meaningful, I think, which has also changed the way I look at nature. See, Sherpa community prays to these peaks. For them, it's their goddesses, not even God, they are goddesses. So for them, Mount Everest is Sagar Matha, it's their mother. And he said that these are the peaks which are our mother. Sagar Matha is my mother. And he actually folded his hand like this while he was talking. And he said, all the other peaks that you see here, they are the sister peaks of Sagar Matha. And even when we ever climb up a peak, we first ask for forgiveness, because you cannot set a foot on your mother, on your God. But he said, right now, anybody who pays money can try and summit Everest. So he was extremely upset about the fact that it's changed the way now people look at that goddess. And he said that because Sagar Matha in Tibetan language is known as Chomolungma, which means the goddess of the world. And he said that his father had told Kancha Sherpa when he was some 10, 11 years old child, that please ensure that Sagar Matha never gets angry with us. So those are Kancha Sherpa's words, that he said, yes, Everest has brought us prosperity, because that region is such a difficult region. There is lack of education, lack of healthcare. Sherpas have lived a very, very difficult life, extremely difficult life, which we cannot even imagine. So Everest, Sagar Matha has actually nurtured them. It has brought people to its fold, which has brought development and other facilities to that region. But now it has reached a stage where I guess the goddess is slowly getting angry.
What does this anger mean for the rest of South Asia?
I think for the rest of South Asia,
or at least India.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for India also, if you see, we've been nature worshippers originally. If you see, all of us, even today, I recently went to Madhya Pradesh for a reporting assignment, and I visited the banks of Narmada for reporting. Nobody calls her Narmada. It's Narmada Ji. There is a respect that we always give, whether it is to our rivers. Ganga is always Gangama. We'll always, that's how it is with us. Even
and
with
Jamna
pigs.
Ji.
Jamna Ji, it is always certain respect we give to nature. Even with whether it's Mount Kailash, whether we believe some god lives there, whatever, there is some reverence. And I think even in India, we have the same kind of cultural practices. If you go to tribal areas in Maharashtra, there are Bagh temples. Baghoba is a god for them. Now it's a different thing that tigers have become like an enemies of human beings because of the kind of conservation models we have followed. But Bagh is they pray to Bagh. So I think we need to really train ourselves to re-look at nature the way it should be looked at. It is giving us water, it is giving us air that we breathe, it is giving us minerals, it is giving us everything for our survival. But I think the whole idea towards nature has also become I can pay for it and I can get it. You know how it is when Delhi's pollution becomes so bad, we'll put air purifiers, I will put for water, I will put a RO plant at my home. So the whole idea that I can pay for things and get cleaner nature or cleaner environment is so set in our heads. But we're almost reaching a tipping point. The way disasters are happening now back to back, I think no money will really safeguard us. You see what's happening to our cities when it floods. When Delhi had floods last year,
Yeah.
I mean, it did not just affect poor communities living along Yamuna. It actually entered a lot of posh colonies. So I think we really need to relook at nature and rebuild our relationship with it. Some kind of respect and reverence and restraint has to come. It's not like an endless pool that you can just keep digging, keep drawing things from it, and it's never going to end. It's going to even end for the richest and the so-called most secure people also.
Absolutely. Well, Nidhi, that's a really profound and important thought. One can never say it too often. Many congratulations for having reached the Everest Base Camp. I know it's difficult, and you just told us how difficult it actually was. Hats off to your mental resilience. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much for Bharti having me here. Thank
Thank
you.
you.